Hey everyone, welcome back to Build. I'm your host, Brittany Jones-Cooper, and today I'm sitting down with Killian Scott from the upcoming Starz psychological thriller, Dublin Murders. In the show, two detectives put their friendship to the test as they are pulled deeper and deeper into the dark secrets of a murder case. It is an incredibly complex show that will keep you guessing until the end. Take a look. Put your hands together for Killian Scott. Good morning.
Good morning. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Just got into New York last night.
Nice. From
I'm
where?
Generally confused with jet lag, but otherwise I'm fine.
Where'd you fly from?
From Dublin, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not just to coincide with the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're just really on brand right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's where I grew up and I'm from. And we shot this for 7 months back between Belfast in Northern Ireland and Dublin. And it's a funny thing, it was the first time in a while that I'd actually filmed anything at home. And Belfast is where they shoot Game of Thrones. So you've got this kind of really seasoned professional crew that have been working there on that show for, you know, almost a decade. And we were basically able to just sort of convince them to come over and join our party and make this show, which, you know, has just finished its run in the UK as of last night. It's lovely. Yeah, we've been really happy with how it's confused people.
Yeah, I was telling you in the back, I was like, I watched the first 4 episodes and I am still so damn confused, but in an exhilarating kind of way.
Good,
like,
that's a better type
yeah,
of confusion.
I think that's why people love murder mysteries and they love these thrillers, because you want it to keep you guessing. You don't want to know who did it in the first episode.
Yeah, and I think when you respect an audience, you know, that an audience doesn't want that and that they have to do a little bit of work and be engaged with it, I think we really appreciate that, you know, and it's certainly the kind of show where, you know, you've got these two central characters who work together investigating this murder in Dublin that they fear is perhaps related to a case from 20 years previously of children disappearing, and you follow them on this kind of road that the writer described as you're almost following two people into hell, and you kind of just hope you all come out the other side. And there's a real, you know, the characters are facing quite significant challenges in their own lives. And they're difficult people, you know, they've got sort of serious traumas and stuff in their backgrounds. And there is a sense with both of them that they've kind of managed to keep a certain mask on and now at this point, when they go into the woods, it sort of forces them to face certain things that maybe the mask begins to kind of slip a little bit, you know. That
description of two people traveling into hell, it like really kind
so
of sums it up.
intense.
Is that from the book author?
That was from Sarah Phelps, who adapted it. So, you know, Tana French wrote the novels. Yeah. It's a series of novels following the Dublin Murder Squad, as they're called in the books. And each novel is a different detective's perspective. So the first novel is Rob's, which is kind of perfect as an actor, you know, when you have your questions about backstory. It's like, here's a 700-page novel entirely from your perspective. It helps fill in the gaps. But so Sara Phelps adapted the first 2 and sort of merged them for the sake of these 8 episodes this first season. So you follow Rob and Cassie, and then they also have their own individual stories that kind of come to the foreground. But it's, you know, the whole thing really was, you know, kind of an embarrassment of riches. You know, when people sort of, even this morning I was doing an interview and someone asked me, you know, like, what drew you to the part or whatever, and I was like, well, everything. I mean, as an actor, when you get material that you respond to, and for some reason, Rob, I don't know what this says about me, but immediately I just got it. I read one scene, it's from very early on in the first episode, where Rob and Cassie are interrogating 2 people about a totally separate issue that is kind of just a preamble before we get to the woods. And Rob has this monologue kind of, you know, deconstruction, a psychological deconstruction of this poor girl. And he's quite brutal in it. But there was just something about him that immediately I just found intriguing. And then Sara Phelps, the way she writes, there's real humanity there. I mean, it's a very, it doesn't sort of try and create I think it's a realistic, in many respects, portrayal of the complexities of, you know, human people and the darker sides or whatever, and it explores that.
With his career choice, right? You would assume he's like this very masculine and tough guy, but then you kind of see all the vulnerability in him as you get through the pilot, and then obviously as you continue on, you see that he is masking a lot.
Yes, there is a lot happening behind the surface that is sort of just now really starting to catch up with him and Cassie with her own trials and stuff. But it was one of the things I thought about when I was doing it, like to work that job in real life. I mean, it's such a, takes a very particular type of person. Now, I didn't think too much about that because, in terms of my preparation, I find that, and I went to a very method Stanislavski-based school in London, but with a gig like this, I really believed it was all on the page, and that if you spend enough time with the script and, you'd be running it like 300 times before you even take it to set, that it does sort of tell you everything you need to know. And then Sarah Green is just a masterclass. I mean, she's such an easy person to work with. And we had Conleth Hill from Game of Thrones, and we had a lot of really good people that, I didn't need to think about some of those things too much, or like the boarding school background and all this kind of thing. But when I thought about it later, I was like, that's a pretty intense occupation to be spending your time
super loaded.
Engaged with.
Yeah, there's a lot of triggers.
There's definitely a few. Yeah.
I'm interested because the books are so successful, and you said it was a really great resource for you in developing who Rob is. Is there an interesting part of him that you learned from the book that isn't in the show?
Well, what we had to do was, I read the first book, and then we basically got into rehearsals and the filming, and you kind of have to make a separation because it would just get way too confusing. Because Sara Phelps has making some choices that aren't in the book, and obviously if you're trying to turn a 700-page novel into 8 hours, you're going to have to lose some things here and there. But no, there was much more of a general thing in terms of the books kind of helped round some things out a little bit. But it was such a, when I got the call to say I got the gig, I went to a bookstore in Los Angeles on Sunset Boulevard, and I went in, I was like, do you guys have anything by Tana French? And the guy was like, yeah, but we're all sold out. And I was like, good sign. That's a good thing, Excuse me. But yeah, and then read the book, and then we started filming, so.
And so much of, and like I said, I'm not fully through the 8 episodes yet, but this relationship, the one with Sarah, is so pivotal and important, and your chemistry feels very organic and natural. So what kind of chemistry test did you guys do, or what kind of work did you guys build? Because without the trust of these two characters, none of it really works.
Yes, and I completely agree with you on that, and that's why it was quite surprising that we didn't actually do a chemistry test. I made a tape while I was in Los Angeles, and Sarah made a tape while she was in Dublin. And the first time we met was when we came to film, or we did the script reading beforehand. That was the first time. We got really lucky. Yeah, because otherwise it doesn't really, if you don't have that right dynamic between the two central characters, it's very hard for the thing to work on the whole,
So this show was on BBC. It just wrapped up like last week. So right now it's like a minefield of spoilers for anybody who will be starting it this Sunday. What is that experience like for you as the lead on this show? Like, one country's just wrapped it up, then you have, now it's debuting on Starz, and you have like, you're in the middle, sort of.
Well, it's kind of fun because it means you get to kind of go through it again and see how a new audience is going to respond to it. But yeah, it's been really exciting just to see it out in the world. And, because you film it for 7 months and then it's several months before it comes out. And so it's on your mind a lot, and you're just curious, did we do justice to the books? Are our producers happy? Will the audience like it? And all those things. And it seems like it's kind of gone down well. I'm not on Twitter, but I hear from friends that people
you're missing out.
Baffled across the board.
The Twitter comments about this show are fantastic. Because
cool. Okay.
Everybody is very confused, but they love being confused. And people have different theories, and people have. Shows like this are almost the best for social media.
Well, yeah, because it kind of gets people pulling their hair out, kind of going, "What's going on here?" And it's a fine line. We were kind of talking about this. You got to confuse people enough to keep them coming back. But if you don't give them anything, then there's just like, this is too frustrating an experience. I'm trying to relax here. This sucks.
Do you watch crime documentaries or crime shows? Like, are you somebody who can solve stuff like this?
No, me and Sarah realized that, like, in real life, worst detective. She would be actually quite good. But, I just, there's so many things in the script. I was like, I just did not pick that up at all.
That's so bad. I mean, I watched this show, and I really won't know who did it until, like, they tell me. I'm just that kind of
And I'm fine with that. I'm not...
I have no idea. I cannot connect the dots. If this was real life, I would just...
It's not a talent, I think, either of us, or other things going on.
That's why we're sitting up here with microphones.
Probably, yeah.
So you filmed all of this in Dublin, you said? Dublin and Belfast?
Dublin and Belfast, yeah.
Yeah. And you were an Irishman, but... You use an English accent.
Playing an English
in the show.
Yeah.
So does that feel like unfair to you? You're like, come on, man.
I know, the one chance I finally get to go home and work with, friends and colleagues in my native land, and I have to speak with an English accent. It was it's immediately, because we're all people. So it's a little cringe when I'm like ordering a coffee or asking for a coffee from like an Irish assistant director in this boarding school English accent, but you kind of have to stay in it because at least I do. I mean, there are better actors who probably don't, but I certainly find that when I'm in, I did a show for Netflix a couple of years ago called Damnation, which was an American role. Now that was different because we were filming in Canada with Canadian American actors whose ears just wouldn't have been as attuned to an Irish accent. So I just arrived sort of in this American accent and no one kind of really could tell. Whereas in Ireland, it's like, we know you're not from England, dude. Why are But But luckily everyone was very supportive. But it was definitely, I was in Los Angeles and I was like, okay, this is a script that we're going to film in Belfast and Dublin, a story set in Dublin with Irish actors. It's called Dublin Murders, and I'm playing an Englishman. That's strange, but it was a wonderful pleasure to do it.
And you said you stayed in the accent for the 7 months?
Well, there's a guy in Belfast, Brendan Gunn is his name. He's a dialect coach, and he's worked with like Daniel Day-Lewis and Brad Pitt, and somehow got lumped with me.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. I don't know those guys, but so he was working with me on it briefly beforehand, and then he stayed with me for the first couple of episodes, and so I kind of feel that until you've really relaxed into the performance, I need to do those things. But then after a few months, just because it starts to become a second skin, when you're playing a character for 7 months, it's one of the beauties of, how popular TV shows are now, is that you really get to spend time with the character and you can kind of let it unfold. So we go to film episode 1 or whatever, and I'm not really thinking about, well, also you don't know because you get the scripts as you're filming, so you're not kind of making decisions for the end of the season. You can kind of you can just let it breathe with you and live in it. And people often talk about that thing of like, how do you put the character to bed after the day or the weekend? I don't think you really want to. At least I don't, because I feel once you've gotten there, it's much easier to stay there than to constantly having to try and turn it on. Similarly with the accent, if you have to stop and think, oh wait, I'm English, therefore, it just makes your life easier, I think, if you can get over the slight amount of self-consciousness.
But that's how you studied, you said. It was a little more method. So when did you go to acting school? Was that always the decision, or was that just something you fell into?
So I was in Dublin doing amateur theatre for about 4 years, and I was studying English and Greek and Roman civilization, which occasionally maybe sort of sounds the slightest bit impressive, and I assure you it's not. I know nothing about those things. Yeah, it was
worth the price of tuition, I guess.
I said to my parents, apparently, when I got there, I was like, yeah, I just want to go to college for 6 months just to do some plays in the Drama Society. They were like, that's awesome, we're funding your entire life. But yeah, so I was doing that in Dublin, and it was strange. I didn't realize that there were acting schools. I know that's crazy to think of now, but at the time I just figured people just went and did it. And then some of my peers who were also actors, they were going to some of these schools in London. They'd gotten in, and I was like, well, I guess I'll do that. Or I'll try to, at least. I mean, the auditioning process for these schools is crazy. It's thousands of people for like 20 places. And I came across one, because everywhere else flatly kind of refused me. And then I came across this place called the Drama Centre, which is actually where Colin Firth and Tom Hardy and Michael Fassbender went. But it's not famous in the way some of those other drama schools are. And I went there, and it was sort of, I was lucky because I got a gig just before the third year began. So I got out of there after 2 years.
What gig did you get?
It was a Dublin gangster show called Love Hate.
Oh, okay, yeah, that ran for a couple seasons.
We did 5 seasons.
That was your first role, and
that was my first. That was the first time people paid me to act, which was a thrilling experience. But yeah, I mean, it was sort of, it was the first Stanislavski-based acting institution, which in layman's terms, the first method-based school. So it was very much like 2 years of very intense group therapy. Like, it was just really intense, and but I think, I don't know, I'm very fond of drama schools, and I think that look, some people, it's for some people and it's not for others. And like, Barry Keoghan is one of the most wonderful actors working at the moment. I mean, he did Killing of a Sacred Deer, Dunkirk, Chernobyl recently, and I worked with him a couple of times, and Barry never trained, and he's a genius as far as I'm concerned. But I do think that there is a certain commitment to the thing by going, yeah, I'm going to do this for 3 years, and it's going to be every single day from 8 in the morning until 9 p.m. And it exposes you to all these different theories. But a lot of drama school, as far as I'm concerned, it's sort of trying to get over yourself a little bit and get over your self-consciousness, and become comfortable with kind of getting it wrong.
Is that something you had to, though, learn on the job? Obviously, you went to school, but like your first job and going forward, how much have you changed from role to role, just in how much you've learned?
So much. You just like, yeah, I mean, some people say that you need as much time, the amount of time you're in drama school, you need the same amount of time to kind of unravel from it and unwind. You just relax a lot more. I mean, there's a certain, you see it a lot in interviews with musicians or actors or painters or people who are involved in creative things, and they talk about this idea that oftentimes the greatest things happen in a kind of state of unconsciousness. It's flow is maybe another term used for it, and I really believe in that. And I think I kind of want it to become, almost feel like a dream, like you're not quite aware. You don't make any decisions beforehand, I remember, doing a scene, or like as an example, it's like, I would never be interested in things like this is how detectives stand or sit, or that we were shooting a scene where one of our set dressers, Cara, wonderful, very talented girl, and she was saying, we want to put your coat on the chair to dress it into the background, because, in the scene, Rob has been here for a while, and we're trying to tell that story. And she was like, how do you think Rob would put his coat down? And I was like, can I just grab it for a second, we'll see. And I just took it and I just throw it on the thing. I'm like, well, I guess that's how it happens, because I think in a way with character and all this kind of stuff, I mean, the thing where I've diverged slightly from the training I did was that you can spend, preparation is very useful, but at the same time, there's a huge amount gained by just trusting yourself, trusting the other actor, and trusting your director, and trusting the script, and kind of just seeing what happens, I never really buy into these ideas of like, this is a sad scene, or this is a happy scene, or this is whatever. I think it's just, you go into the thing and you just play the energy of the moment, and it's not live theater. You can kind of do it again, and That's a good thing, because I'm really bad most of the time. Like, whatever's in this, it's just like, you should have seen some of the other takes that day, you know.
I think what you're saying makes sense, especially with a show like this that is so rooted in sort of just like real human feelings and emotions. A lot of the subtlety plays really well, and you just sort of living in the scenes and being authentic, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. And like you say, with this show, the material warmed itself to that, because I mean, I think you're just bringing yourself to the table, really. Like, I don't really... It's a very fundamental idea in sort of method acting and Stanislavski stuff, is that it's intensely personalized. There's no... character is not a thing. It's not like I am playing Rob Riley. It's like, I am Rob Riley.
A detective with a lot of secrets and a dark past.
You know, yeah, and like... But that subtle shift can be... And no one needs to know about that. I think one of the things about the method stuff is that sometimes it gets bad press, because I think some people do it wrong, you know, and they force that approach on other people. I think it can be an entirely individual and kind of private thing. Who is it? Is it Ryan Reynolds was given an interview, and he talked about like, dude, if you want to do the meth, that's great. Just don't be giving me evil eyes over your Cheerios on the breakfast truck, you know, because your character's not meant to like me or whatever. And I understand. I relate to that. I think he's right.
Ever complicate things outside of set though for you, like with your friends and family?
No, I mean it's not. I wouldn't take it to that extent again, because I don't feel I need to. It's sort of, you know, it's not like that thing of like, if my mum calls me on the Monday night after we finish filming, that I'm answering in the English accent. Hello, mother. You know,
what the hell?
Like, but you know, it's definitely one of those. I think when you take the approach, at least that it's a personal experience, that it's not pretend. You know, and in that way, there's a superficial idea of pretense, which it isn't, but of course it is on some level, because you're not English detective. But I think by virtue of doing that, yeah, it gets into some funky places, because you're like, I remember I had friends who came up to Belfast one weekend, and I went to meet them on the Friday evening, you know, for dinner, and then we were going to have a weekend together in Belfast. And I walked in, and they were like, "You look like you've come out of some sort of war zone." And that day, we'd shot 2 separate scenes from 2 separate episodes, but in both of which where I was having a complete mental breakdown. So you kind of, you know, you do carry some of that stuff around, but I just think that's part of the creative process, and it's part of the satisfaction of the thing. I mean, like, for all those days that you might have filming, there's also all these days where you're euphorically happy in a way that you cannot find anywhere else, and that's why I think we do it in the first place.
You're doing your passion. You're
exactly
creating. I think
you
feel that way when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so those things don't really feel like a sacrifice at all, you know. Sure.
Yeah. We do have some questions before
Great.
we get out of here.
Yeah. General
Who has
knowledge.
the first one?
Hi, Killian. I actually am a huge fan of the screenwriter Sara Phelps from previous productions.
Great.
What was your working experience like with her?
Sarah's amazing. She's, you know, as you'd know, she's found a bit of a fame for herself in terms of adaptations of Agatha Christie and Charles Dickens and like very hallowed kind of English stuff. And she was a dream, because she wrote extraordinary scripts, but she also, I think, trusted her own work, that there was no... like the concept of improvisation or anything that did not happen here. I mean, you followed the almost like, you know, Pinter or Beckett. Yeah, you follow the punctuation even. And she's such a generous spirit, and she's just wickedly intelligent. And she speaks so beautifully. We've been doing this kind of press stuff everywhere, and sometimes me and Sarah Green would say, you know, if you're paired with Sarah, you can almost breathe a sigh of relief, because when someone asks a question, she will be able to give them like a 15-minute, extraordinarily philosophical kind of but human and funny response, and you get to just sit there and be like, I'm so glad I don't have to talk, because I have no idea what to say, you know. So she was, and she's got a wonderful creative energy, and she's just very honest person. She's great, yeah.
When you watch the use of flashbacks, and I mean, the writing is so tight, and I can only imagine what's going on in her head.
Yeah, yes. she referred to this kind of thing. One of my favorite expressions of hers, rage eating bread. So she would be typing through the night, furiously smoking and rage eating bread while she's kind of just trying to, you know, put all this stuff out on the screen. She's cool. Like, you know, there was a journalist in England recently referred to her as a rock star writer, and I would fully endorse that sentiment.
I love that. It's like
it's cool,
carbs and cigarettes all night long. Sounds
all the best things.
Like my dream. One last question.
Hi, Killian.
Hi.
So, even though you said that you'd be a pretty bad detective in real life, I was wondering, while filming, did you ever find any similarities between you and Rob?
Yes. So...
I'm sorry.
I really have to hammer on the one. I would be an extremely poor detective. Really, I no talents for it whatsoever. But yes, you know, I feel that way about all the roles I've played. Again, it comes back to the kind of approach of fundamentally every character I would look at. It's sort of, this is just me in a different set of circumstances. Perhaps in Rob's case, a particularly extraordinarily different set of circumstances. But you know, that it is just that. It's like, well, had I gone this way, I would have turned into this guy or that guy or whatever. So yeah, I mean, Rob right, I have this affection for the character. It's weird, but you know, Rob's really concerned with like the past and identity and like truth and the nature of reality and really like existential problems that really aren't good things to entertain if you want to sleep at night. And I can do a little bit of that, I think. But yeah, I would feel... There was something about Rob that I really responded to on a very personal level. I'm not quite sure yet what it was, but it was something that... I think it helps. Not if you... It can be dangerous if you overly worship your own character. I've seen that happen with other actors where they're almost like... They don't like it when the writers have their character do things that they don't agree with because they like their character too much. You got to be careful with that. But I really adored this role and this person, and I still do. And it's a real pleasure to talk about it, actually. You know, because it was an extraordinary creative experience to get. I mean, it's great because we've touched on a few of the kind of like, you know, drama school stuff and. Like, I remember just, you know, when I was doing amateur theater, the idea of doing, you know, and I got a small part in like a little movie that no one ever saw. But that was just, that blew my mind, you know? And so when I try and stay as in touch or connected to that dude as possible, like that I've gotten to do this, this role and the complexity and also me and Sarah enjoyed that thing of you're kind of leading a company. You know, and that has its other responsibilities. That's something I learned, you know, from guys like, you know, Aidan Gillen and Brendan Gleeson and Michael Fassbender and Ian Glenn. Some really wonderful actors who I've gotten to work with who you see that when you're kind of leading something, you have additional responsibilities, and it's important that people who are coming to set and you're 5 months in, you've spent 5 months in the woods in Belfast, and it's Ireland, so it's wet all the time, and you're cold, that these people might be coming in for their one day or their first day of their film, that you want to have the same warmth and enthusiasm, and you want to create an atmosphere. Again, coming back to something we talked about earlier, I think the right kind of creative atmosphere is one where people feel very, very comfortable, and one where people feel they can make mistakes, get it wrong. I think it's it's usually... when you're taking risks that interesting things happen. Sometimes it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, you just go again. It's not a big deal. And we both enjoyed, you know, that process, but also the fact that we got to do it together. You know, it's not, you know, me and Sarah are the leads together. It's not one of those shows, maybe like something like Mad Men, the first season of that, or earlier seasons where it was very much John Hamm's central role. Me and Sarah got to do it together, which was, you know, I was texting her last night because the show is finished and there's a particular scene in the final episode that was very moving to film. And I texted her about it and I said, you know, that'll be a life and career highlight for forever. And she was just like, she started filming something today. She was like, don't make me cry. I'm nervous already. I've got to go to set. So, you know, it was the whole thing was such a privilege, and I can't wait to see what people think of it over here.
Well, if I'm the judge, I think people are going to love it. I mean, like you said, you guys are co-leads, and that makes it even more fascinating to watch because both of your characters have these very complex histories, and you really kind of get to dig into all these different mysteries throughout the series.
Totally.
Which keeps you interested and confused, guys. That's the ride you're going to be on.
It's a good combination.
If you guys want to check it out, Dublin Murders premieres on Starz on November 10th. Put your hands together for Killian Scott.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.